Absolutely. Majority Leader does sound good. Again, we need to get folks elected to the state Senate and the state House so that we can have a Speaker of the House, a President of the Senate, a Majority Leader in both houses, so that we can once again set the agenda and set an agenda that is friendly to families, that is friendly to businesses, that creates jobs, and that restores prosperity back to Colorado. You know, as I'm hearing more of a rural setting, it reminds me of a buddy of mine back home. My next door neighbor is a guy named Virgil. Virgil raises a few hogs, and one day he was running a little bit behind. He had to get his hogs to the auction, and he had stock racks in his pickup, and he had loaded his hogs back up there, and everything was just going wrong, and he was speeding down the road to the auction. He came around this one turn just a little bit faster, and as he straightened it out, he kind of fishtailed a little bit, but as he straightened it out, all of a sudden he saw flashing lights behind him, and it was the sheriff. And the sheriff pulled him over and he said, "Virgil," he said, "do you know how fast you were going back there?" And Virgil said, "No." He said, "But I know I was going pretty fast. It's just been one of those days." He said, "Well, Virgil, you were going about 60 miles an hour. That's a little bit fast for that old pickup that you've got." Virgil said, "Yeah, I know, Sheriff. I'll slow it down. I'll be careful the rest of the way into town." The sheriff said, "Well, Virgil, ain't you got a governor on that thing?" Virgil looked at him and said, "No, Sheriff, that's just the hog manure you smell." I can only tell that joke for a few more months. You know, a couple weeks ago, last week, a couple days ago, the gentleman who served as Senate President with me when I was Majority Leader, John Andrews, and I both came out and publicly support of Dan Mays for governor, and I had a number of people who called me up, who emailed me and asked why I had chosen to do that. And I said, you know, up to this point, Dan Mays has done everything that has been asked of him. He went through the caucus process, he went through the assembly process, he went through the primary, he did everything following it by the rules. And I remember back in 1998, when I first ran for the state Senate in a district that had been held by a Democrat for 16 years, and I remember the pundits and the people who knew everything or thought they did in Denver saying, well, if Hillman wins that Republican primary, we're going to lose that seat. Surprising to them, on election night, we won that seat, and we won it fairly easily, even though we'd been outspent by our opponent. We did a lot of the same things. We went out and we worked hard. We had, most importantly, a lot of very good volunteers. And that's what I believe Dan Mays' campaign has earned from the Republican Party from this point on. Is we need to come together, we need to support him, we need to help him get across the finish line with our candidate. And I also want to congratulate Dan Mays on an outstanding choice for Lieutenant Governor. Tamara Williams worked with me to drive trial lawyers crazy when we were in the state legislature. She's got a good head on her shoulders, and I think she'll be a good compliment on the team. So, congratulations. Also, when I came in the door tonight, one of the first people I saw was Perry Buck, and she looked at me kind of cautiously and she said, "So are we on the same team?" I said, "Perry, absolutely. Perry knows that I was supporting the other candidate in the primary, but I told her this is going to be the easiest switch that I have made. It's going to be, it is very easy to take those other stickers off, put my Ken Buck stickers on. Lori hooked me up with 2 of those tonight. I'm happy to do it, to put the Ken Buck sign in my front yard, because we cannot afford to be represented by Michael Bennett for 6 years. And as we look forward, first of all, our prospects, and I know, by the way, I know that the mind can only absorb what the seat can endure, so although they told me that I could have 20 minutes, I'm not going to take it tonight. Let me hit on just a couple of people. Yeah, you can applaud for that too. Hey, listen, guys, I got a 3-hour drive home, so I know what you're talking about here. As we look at the races that are going to be at the very top of the ballot here in Larimer County and out in Kit Carson County where I live, our ballot looks about like yours. I, for the first time, have been represented, quote-unquote represented, for the last 2 years by a Democrat congresswoman. I'm not so satisfied with that representation. I don't know about you all. It's great to have a candidate like Cory Gardner, who is running a positive race, who is doing a fantastic job, and who's going to be our next congressman from the 4th Congressional District. And the reasons we need to elect Cory and the reasons we need to elect Ken are very much the same. It's to stop the agenda of Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reagn. Now, I don't mind poking a little bit of fun at some of our opponents. You know, I listen occasionally to Betsy Markey on TV. I don't ever get to see her in person because she doesn't know that the district exists south of Interstate 76. I think black-footed ferrets are more often sighted than Congresswoman Markey in that neck of the woods. But when the Congresswoman's on TV, did any of you all remember watching Saturday Night Live when they used to have the church lady? And the church lady and Congresswoman Markey, if you close your eyes, you have to kind of pay attention to figure out which one's talking. The church lady, when anybody did something wrong, she'd say in her sort of condescending voice, well, could it be Satan? And I can just imagine when Betsy Markey is considering how she's going to vote, she said, well, could it be Nancy Pelosi? I'll stick to my day job. And then we've got, in the U.S. Senate, we have got the hand-picked senator of Governor Bill Ritter, who didn't know where Washington County was until he went there to cut a TV commercial. Nobody saw him when he was there. Nobody knew about it until after he had left. And yet, when you watch the way that Michael Bennet has voted for the last year and a half, it is pretty clear that he has been roped to lead by Harry Reagn. That's not going to change if he gets elected for 6 more years. I had a friend tell me the other day that Michael Bennet is much more conservative than the guy that we've seen in office for the last year and a half. And I said, you know, on our farm, I know what it's like when you start with a young colt and you break it to lead, you don't have to teach it to lead again every year. And Michael Bennett's been roped to lead pretty easy. They figured out how to punch his buttons and how to get him to toe the line. And believe me, if he gets a 6-year term, it's not going to make it any easier for him to be independent since he hasn't been for the last year and a half. So that's why we have to have Ken Buck in the United States Senate. We've got to have Cory Gardner to restore the 4th Congressional District back to common sense Colorado values. And if you need just a couple more reasons, let me give you a few more just to recap what we have seen go on in Washington for the last 18 months. There's Obamacare. If they can tell you that after you've paid your taxes, that with your hard-earned money that you have left in your pocket, if they can tell you that you have to spend it, not just to buy insurance, but to buy government-approved insurance, there's very little limitation to what they cannot tell you that you have to do with your own money, on your own time, after you've paid your taxes. When we look at the energy policy, what other country thinks it's good energy policy to lock up our own domestic energy resources so that we have to buy energy from foreign dictators and terrorists who want to do us harm? We used to say only in America as though it was a good thing. In this case, only in America do we put our oil and gas resources off limits. And by the way, we can thank Colorado's own Ken Salazar for a lot of those wonderful decisions as well. Our energy policy ought to be to have affordable, reliable energy policy, not to drive up the cost of energy through horrible ideas like cap and tax that are going to make it more costly for Colorado families, more costly for Colorado businesses. And then the folks in Washington can't figure out why with the cost of Obamacare and the looming cost of a cap and tax system, why businesses aren't rushing out the door to create jobs. You and I can figure that one out. But the biggest problem in Washington, D.C. right now is the enormous, irresponsible, immoral debt that we are passing on to our children and grandchildren. George W. Bush, in his last full year in office, had an embarrassing deficit of $400+ billion a year. The first full year of Barack Obama, the deficit for 1 year is going to be $1,400 billion, with trillion-dollar deficits for as far as the eye can see. It's sort of like if we came here and we were having steak and lobster tonight, and we enjoyed ourselves, and at the end of the night, the time came when we needed to pay the bill, and we picked out a little 2-year-old or 3-year-old, and we said, give the bill to them. That's what our government policy is doing. We are facing the potential of being the first generation that hasn't turned over to our children and grandchildren a country that gives them more opportunity, a country that gives them more freedom, a country that gives them more possibility to be all that they can be and to make our country continue to be the beacon of hope to the free world. Let me just leave you with 3 quick thoughts about the election that we're looking at. We should make this choice in November for our friends, not just for our Republican friends, for our unaffiliated friends and for our conservative Democrat friends. And all of a sudden you're seeing more Democrats who say, hey, wait a second, this Obama thing is not what I thought I was voting for. The choice this November has to be abundantly clear. And we as Republicans need to remember what this choice is, because the reason that we fell on hard times in the last 2 elections is because a lot of our folks in Washington forgot. That's probably been a very good lesson for us as Republicans to remember why we are Republicans and why people vote for us. It's because we are to give them the choice between the party of freedom and the party of government, between the party of opportunity and the party of entitlement, and between the party of personal responsibility and the party of invasive government regulations. People see what that choice is. They see what the Obama vision is. They see what Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid are all about. People are sick and tired of it. As you can see, that Barack Obama has the lowest approval ratings since Jimmy Carter. I love the sign I saw in Grand Junction the other day. Picture of Jimmy Carter. Bet you wish I was here now. Speaks even better than George W. Bush. But folks, if there is any more reason, the one thing we do not want to do is wake up the day after the election and say, if we'd only worked a little harder, if we'd only dug a little deeper, maybe our candidates would have done a little bit better. This is a rare opportunity, unparalleled for our party, I believe, since 1994. We need to double down and support all of our candidates. If you'll watch the last 2 elections, the Democrats didn't take it easy in 06 and 08 because they had a tailwind. They doubled down and put the pedal to the metal, and that's why they did so well. Well, now people have seen what that's all about. They've gotten their fill of it. It's our opportunity and our responsibility, if we want to bring back an economy that will create jobs and create opportunities for our children and our grandchildren, if we want to restore a government that actually promotes freedom instead of invading every area of your life, this is the year to get behind our candidates from the federal office to the state capitol and win back the state of Colorado, win back our country for freedom-loving Americans, most of whom in this room get to be Republican. Thank you very much.